I wasn't family enough to sit at their table. But I paid for it, they can't say anything. My name's Eli. I'm 34, and I guess you could say I've always been the responsible one in my family. Not the favorite, not the wild one, just reliable. The guy who pays his bills on time, remembers everyone's birthdays, shows up when he says he will, and doesn't cause a fuss. I work in finance, live alone, and have kept mostly to myself, not because I don't care, but because I've learned to stop expecting much in return. My family, they're loud, close-knit in a performative kind of way, and world-class at pretending everything is just fine while ignoring the actual issues. I've always felt like an accessory to their lives. Involved, but never really included. The kind of guy they'd invite to the wedding, but not to be in the photos. Growing up, my younger brother Mason was the star. The golden boy. Charismatic, impulsive, always causing a stir. And yet no matter how many times he messed up, dropping out of college, quitting jobs, moving back in with our parents, he somehow always landed on his feet. Mom and Dad adored him. Meanwhile, I put myself through school, built a solid career, and even helped with the mortgage when Dad's hours were cut. But that didn't earn me a spot at the center of anything. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. I kept showing up, sending the checks, smiling through the snide little jokes like, "Eli, you're so serious," or, "Oh, we figured you'd be working. You're always working." It stung sometimes, but I just nodded and laughed along, telling myself that one day maybe I'd be seen as part of the family, not just the wallet behind it. Then last fall, that illusion shattered. It started with a phone call from my mom. Mason had just gotten engaged to a woman named Brooke. My mom loved her, called her an angel before she'd even finished dessert. They were planning an engagement dinner at a rooftop restaurant, downtown fancy place, definitely out of my parents' normal budget. That should have been my first red flag. "Eli, sweetheart," my mom started in that syrupy voice she saves for when she wants something. "We'd love for you to come to Mason and Brooke's engagement dinner. It's going to be such a special night." Of course, I said, "Just send me the details." Then came the kicker. "And if it's not too much trouble, we were hoping you might help with the reservation. Just to hold it. We'll pay you back." "Yeah, you already know how that goes." So I booked the place. Private rooftop space for 20 guests. Put down the deposit on my card. Didn't complain. It was Mason's night. Maybe, just maybe this time, I'd actually feel included. I showed up right on time. 7:00 sharp. Navy suit, fresh shirt cufflinks I'd been saving for something nice. I brought a bottle of champagne for the couple and even printed out a personalized card with their initials. The hostess gave me a polite nod and walked me to the private section. It was beautiful. String lights, floral centerpieces, soft jazz playing in the corner. Everyone was already there. Mom, Dad, Mason, Brooke, her family, a bunch of friends. All with drinks in hand, laughing, toasting, having a great time. I walked up smiling, expecting at least a warm hello. Instead, Mason barely looked up from his drink. "Oh, hey," he said with a lazy grin. "Glad you made it." Then he pointed over his shoulder. "Sorry, this table's for family only, but there's a spot for you right over there." He was pointing to a fold-up chair tucked next to a trash bin, like he was assigning me a seat in the corner of a cafeteria. I blinked, thought he was joking. Looked to my mom for confirmation. She gave me that tight little smile that says, "Don't make this a thing." Dad raised his glass. Brooke didn't even glance in my direction. And a couple of people laughed. Actually laughed. I stood there too long. Couldn't speak. My throat closed up. I felt like I was 13 again, left out of a cousin's wedding photo because I didn't match the vibe. So I walked to the chair, set my champagne on the floor, sat down. Alone. Didn't even take my coat off. The waiter came by. Asked if I was with the party. I nodded. He handed me a glass of water and moved on. That was the last conversation I had for the next 2 hours. I sat there watching them laugh, eat toast, and open gifts. Mason gave a long, emotional speech about being surrounded by his closest people. Brooke called my mom the best future mother-in-law a girl could ask for. Nobody even asked if I wanted to order. Eventually, dessert came out, some layered cake with edible gold flakes. The sun dipped below the skyline, the jazz band wound down, and still nobody looked at me. Then the check came. The waiter walked to their table with the bill folder. Looked around. Then he glanced at the card on file, my card, and walked over to me. "Excuse me, sir. The total for the event is $3,018. Should I run the same card for the final amount?" Everyone turned. My brother raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh yeah, Eli's got it." I smiled. Calm, measured, voice steady. "Not my table," I said, just loud enough for everyone to hear. There was a sharp silence. Mason looked confused. My mom frowned. Dad shifted in his seat. Brooke's dad furrowed his brow. "I was told this table was for family only," I continued. "So I assumed that meant I wasn't included." The waiter blinked. "But sir, you made the reservation." "I did." I nodded. "And I paid the deposit. But I didn't eat, didn't drink, wasn't welcome." "So no, I won't be paying." Mason scoffed. "Come on, man, it was just a joke." "Lighten up." I shook my head. "That's the problem. You all think it's just a joke, as long as it's at someone else's expense." Brooke's dad suddenly leaned forward. "You invited this man and sat him next to a trash can." Mason shrugged, suddenly less smug. "It wasn't like that." My mom cut in. "Let's not blow things out of proportion. Eli's just being dramatic. Sensitive as always." There it was. The excuse they always use to explain away everything. The waiter cleared his throat again. "I'm sorry, but we do need a card to close the tab." I stood, grabbed my coat, nodded toward the trash bin, and said, "That's apparently where I belong." And I walked out. Took the stairs instead of the elevator, every step fueled by adrenaline and disbelief. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't going back. When I left that restaurant, I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't even angry anymore, just tired. Tired of being the only one expected to hold everything together while barely being treated like I belonged. I walked for nearly an hour through downtown before finally heading home, the cool air numbing the sting in my chest. I still had that unopened bottle of champagne in hand, the one I'd brought as a gift. Now it just felt ridiculous. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. Some awkward fallout, a few phone calls, and eventually everything would be swept under the rug like always. But I was wrong. Very wrong. Around midnight, my phone lit up. First, it was Mason. "Dude, seriously, you couldn't have just paid the check and talked to me after?" Then a text from Mom. "You embarrassed us in front of Brooke's entire family." Was that your goal? Revenge. I didn't respond to either of them. I didn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't just feed into their narrative that I was being dramatic, difficult, over-emotional, that I'd ruined a night that I wasn't even invited to be a real part of. But then my phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. "Hi," the voice said quietly. "It's Brooke. I know we don't really talk, but can I ask you something?" I paused. "Sure." "Did you really pay for everything? The deposit, the flowers, all of it?" I let out a breath. "Yeah, I did." There was a pause on the other end. Then she said, "They told my dad you offered, that it was your idea." "I never offered," I replied. "They asked." I said yes. That's it. Brooke sighed. "My dad's furious. He thought you were doing it as a gesture, but now he feels like he was lied to, like they made a fool out of him." I didn't say anything. He said, and I quote, "If this is how they treat their own blood, what happens when you marry into it?" She wasn't calling to take sides. She made that clear. But I think for the first time she saw just how ugly the dynamics in our family could be. I hung up after thanking her, but something told me this was just the beginning. 2 days later, the family group chat lit up for the first time since the dinner. "Mom, Eli, we need to talk. Call me when you have a minute." "Mason, you seriously messed things up with Brooke's family. You owe us a fix." "Dad, this is getting out of hand. Just apologize and let's move on." I didn't reply, because it wasn't just about that dinner. It was years of being treated like I was only as valuable as what I could provide, money, time, effort. And the second I stopped doing that, suddenly I was the villain. A few days later, I heard through a mutual friend, Trent, one of Mason's groomsmen, that Brooke's dad was livid. Apparently, he'd gone into full meltdown mode after learning the truth. He'd spent years building this image of a perfect, respectable family for his daughter to marry into. Now he felt duped, lied to, humiliated. He'd even asked the restaurant for a full breakdown of the bill. That's how he found out I'd paid for everything. Not just the deposit, but the floral arrangements, the venue extras, everything. And the final straw when he saw that I'd been seated by the trash can. According to Trent, he said something at brunch the next day, like, "If they treat their own like that, Then what does that say about me and my daughter? That hit Mason like a freight train. Wedding planning went on hold. Pinterest boards disappeared. Brooke moved back into her condo to clear her head. And my mom... She panicked. She didn't text. She didn't call. She sent me an email. An actual 5-paragraph email with the subject line, please. It was full of passive apologies. I never meant to hurt you. We didn't realize you felt left out. Let's not let one silly night destroy the bond we've built. But nowhere in that email was the word sorry. It was all framed as my misunderstanding, my sensitivity, and the cherry on top. A plea to sit down with Mason and smooth things over. I let the email sit in my inbox unopened for 2 more days. Then I got a call from my Aunt Karen, my mom's older sister. We weren't close, but she was the only person in the family who'd ever run her own business and didn't sugarcoat things. Eli, she said, I heard about the dinner. Of course you did, I said, bracing myself. I'm not calling to scold you, she said, almost surprising me. I'm calling to say, good. It's about time someone shook that tree. That caught me off guard. She told me how she always saw the imbalance growing up, how my parents leaned on me like a second income stream, how Mason had been coddled his entire life. And then she added, your mom called me yesterday, asked me to talk some sense into you. I raised an eyebrow, and I told her you didn't need sense. You needed space. And maybe it's time they learned how to function without using you as scaffolding. It was the first time I felt seen. Later that night, I got another message. This one from Mason. Brooke's dad just canceled the venue deposit. Says we're not aligned in values. Fix this, please. Can you help me? And that was the moment I realized he still didn't get it. He still saw me as a utility, a fix-it guy, a debit card with feelings. So I did fix something, just not in the way he wanted. I logged into the joint account we'd set up temporarily last year, back when Mason was unemployed and needed help getting back on his feet. He never closed it. I moved the few $1,000s that were left into my private savings, then called the bank and shut the account down completely. The next morning, Mason called 4 times in a row. I finally picked up. What did you do? He demanded. I closed the account. You? What? You can't just... I can, and I did. You told me I wasn't family, so you don't get to use my money anymore. He tried a different tactic. You're just jealous. Admit it. You always hated that I got more attention. I laughed. Jealous Mason, your fiancé left you, your future father-in-law hates you, and your big wedding's falling apart like a cheap suit. You still think you're winning. Then I added, but hey, maybe you can get Mom to open another credit line in your name. Or maybe Brooke's dad can teach you how to stand on your own. And I hung up. I don't know what he did after that, but a few hours later I got an email from Brooke. Subject line, I think we need to talk. I didn't expect Brooke's email to shake me the way it did. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. There was no drama, no attempt to win sympathy, just honesty and acknowledgement. That alone carried more weight than I realized. After I read it, I sat in my apartment for a while, staring out the window. The city moved like normal cars, passing people walking dogs, the occasional horn, but something in me had shifted. Maybe this was the beginning of being seen. In the days that followed, the silence from Mason and my parents stretched on. I didn't hear from my dad. My mom sent a single text, I hope you're doing okay. That was it. No follow-up, no invitation to talk, no apology. But strangely, I felt lighter, like I had shed a skin I didn't know I was wearing. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't rushing to smooth things over. I wasn't bracing for guilt or stepping in to fix a mess. I was just existing, on my own terms. A week later, I got a message from Trent. He was one of Mason's college buddies, more acquaintance than friend, but he'd always been decent to me at family events. His text was short. Hey man, just wanted to say what you did was solid. That dinner was messed up. I always thought your family treated you weird. Just wanted you to know I noticed. I didn't even realize how much I needed to hear that until I read it twice. I replied with a simple, thanks, but it stayed with me for days. Turns out Trent wasn't the only one. Another message came in this time from one of Mason's groomsmen, Ryan. He sent a screenshot of the restaurant invoice Brooke's dad had forwarded to him and a text that said, so all that Eli volunteered stuff was total BS, damn. Respect, man. Took guts to walk out like that. I wasn't looking for validation, but getting it. Yeah, it helped. Meanwhile, Mason was still in damage control mode. Brooke had officially canceled the wedding. Word got out that she returned the ring, and her dad sent out a formal announcement to the vendors and guests. A change of plans email, polite and distant. Classic Mr. Whitaker. A few of Mason's friends dropped off the radar. Apparently, some of them were more interested in Brooke's professional network than in Mason himself. When that collapsed, so did their loyalty. It was like watching a house of cards fall in slow motion. And I wasn't sorry. Then, about 2 weeks after the dinner, I was at the grocery store when I saw someone I didn't expect, Aunt Karen. She was browsing produce like she wasn't the same person who once said Eli always seems reserved in that vaguely judgmental tone. I tried to dodge her, but she spotted me and made a beeline. Eli, she said, a strange mix of surprise and relief. I was hoping I'd run into you. I blinked. Really? She nodded. I wanted to say something at the time, but your mom asked me not to get involved. That dinner? That was disgraceful. Her bluntness took me off guard. They treat you like a spare part, and it's gone on too long, she said, adjusting her purse strap. I don't blame you for walking out. Honestly, I think it's the best thing you've ever done. I didn't know what to say. Thanks, I managed. You know, she continued, lowering her voice after that night. Your mom called me crying. Not because of what happened, because Mr. Whitaker might tell people. That's all she cared about, how it looked. That stung, but I wasn't shocked. She's starting to realize, Karen said. Slowly. She may never say it out loud, but she knows. Trust me. We parted ways after that. I went home with groceries and a strange sense of clarity. People were starting to see the pattern I'd lived with my whole life, and I wasn't crazy for being hurt by it. Later that night, I sat on my balcony with a beer scrolling through my texts. Most were from coworkers or friends, but at the very bottom, I saw one from Mason. Unread. Sent earlier that afternoon. Hey, I heard Brooke emailed you. I guess you think you won or something. But this whole thing, it's gotten way out of hand. Can we just talk? I didn't reply. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about finally saying enough. Finally putting myself first after years of being a placeholder in my own family. And if Mason didn't get that, well, maybe he never would. I didn't respond to Mason's text. Not out of spite. Not even out of anger, really. Just clarity. He still didn't get it. He thought this was a game, something to win or fix with a conversation. But it wasn't. It was years of quiet disrespect finally hitting a wall. After that, things stayed quiet. No messages from my parents. No surprise visits. It was as if everyone hit pause, unsure of what came next, now that I'd stopped playing the role they assigned me. And honestly, it was peaceful. I took time for myself. I started running again. Booked that solo trip to Spain I'd been putting off for years. Reconnected with a few old friends, told them the whole story over coffee or late-night beers. Every single one of them said the same thing about damn time. Then one Saturday morning, about a month after the dinner, I got another knock on my door. It was Mom. She was standing there in a sweater and jeans, holding a Tupperware container like it was a shield. Lasagna. Classic peace offering. I didn't say anything, just opened the door and stepped aside. She walked in slowly, sat at the kitchen table, and set the container down like she wasn't sure it belonged there either. I just wanted to talk, she said. I sat across from her, said nothing. She took a breath, then another. And then, without deflection or sugarcoating, she said, I owe you an apology. I was quiet. Actually, she added probably more than one. That was new. She went on, not rehearsed, not defensive. She said she hadn't seen it for what it was. That Mason had always been the loud one, the messy one, the charming one. That I was the quiet constant, the one who never asked for anything, and so they leaned on me without ever realizing they were leaning. I think we treated you like a safety net, she said. And we forgot that nets wear out too. That hit harder than I expected. I didn't jump in. I let her talk. And for the first time, she didn't justify it. She didn't say I was just sensitive or taking things too seriously. She just sat there, owning it. I don't expect a quick fix, she said at the end. And I'm not here to ask you to forgive Mason. I just wanted to start with this. I nodded. Thank you. She left the lasagna on the counter and said, Take care of yourself. Then she was gone. And for once she left without asking for anything. The lasagna sat in my fridge for a week before I ate it. Cold bland, but kind of comforting. Like closure. Mason didn't reach out again. Last I heard, through a mutual friend, he'd moved back in with our parents and was working part-time at some marketing job he hated. Brooke returned the ring, deleted all their shared Pinterest boards, and quietly rejoined her old book club. From what I've heard, she's doing fine. As for me, I'm not angry anymore, not bitter either. I'm just rebuilding. I started therapy not because I was broken, but because I finally had the space to look inward. I read books on boundaries, family dynamics, quiet strength. I even found joy and silence in doing things on my own. I furnished my apartment the way I wanted, started cooking again, adopted a dog, a mutt with floppy ears and way too much energy, named him Jasper. My parents send the occasional text now, short, respectful, individual, not through the group chat. Mom even asked if I'd come to Thanksgiving. "Only if you feel up to it," she said. "I haven't decided yet." But here's the thing I've come to realize. For so long I thought showing up was the same as being loved. That if I kept proving myself, kept being responsible, kept being helpful, eventually I'd be seen, respected, included. But love without respect is just control. And I'm not signing up for that anymore. So no, I didn't pay the bill that night. But I cashed in on years of emotional debt. And for the first time in my life, I'm not sitting next to the trash can. I'm at my own table. And it feels damn good.